The principles of inheritance and discovery of linkage. Genetic mapping is based on the principles of inheritance as first described by Gregor Mendel in 1865. From the results of breeding experiments with peas, Pisum sativum, Mendel concluded that each pea plant possesses 2 alleles for each gene, but displays only one phenotype. If the plant is homozygous for a particular characteristic, as it then possesses 2 identical alleles and displays the appropriate phenotype. However, Mendel showed that if 2 pure breeding plants with different phenotypes are crossed, then all the progeny, the F1 generation, display the same phenotype. These F1 plants must be heterozygous, meaning that they possess 2 different alleles, one for each phenotype, one allele inherited from the mother and one from the father. Mendel postulated that in this heterozygous condition, one allele overrides the effect of the other allele. Mendel described the phenotype expressed in the F1 plant as being dominant over the second recessive phenotype. This is the perfectly correct interpretation of the interaction between the pairs of alleles studied by Mendel. One of these is incomplete dominance, where the heterozygous phenotype is intermediate between the 2 homozygous forms. An example is when red carnations are crossed with white ones, the F1 heterozygotes being pink. Another complication is codominance, when both alleles are detectable in the heterozygote. Codominance is the typical situation for DNA markers. After the discovery of dominance and recessiveness, Mendel carried out additional crosses that enable to establish 2 laws of genetics. The first law states that alleles segregate randomly. In other words, if the parents' allele are capital A and small a, then a member of the F1 generation has the same chance of inheriting capital A as it has of inheriting small a. The second law is that pairs of alleles segregate independently, so that inheritance of the alleles of gene capital A is independent of inheritance of the alleles of gene capital B. Because of these laws, the outcomes of genetic crosses are predictable. When Mendel's work was rediscovered in 1900s, it established that genes reside on chromosomes and all organisms have many more genes than chromosomes. Chromosomes are inherited as intact units, so that the alleles of some pairs of genes will be inherited together because they are on the same chromosome. This is the principle of genetic linkage. The complete linkage between many pairs of genes failed to materialize. Pairs of genes were either inherited independently as expected for genes in different chromosomes, or if they showed linkage, then it was only partial linkage. Sometimes they were inherited together and sometimes they were not. This contradiction between theory and observation was the critical step in the development of genetic mapping techniques.